Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. The Atlanta Falcons defense, you said it as we went to break. They are the reason this team is winning football games. And they are looking like, we have yet to really see this defense show any weakness. As I mentioned, they are top 10 in pretty much every stat: pressure, third down conversion, red zone rate. They are doing all the things that you look for, right? Ryan Nielsen's being creative in his pressures and his coverage and knowing when to bring pressure, knowing when not to bring pressure. They're just doing every single thing right. And they come up, and especially once it feels like what's even more impressive is when this game gets to the second half against all these teams, it feels like they figured out what they want to do. They make those adjustments, and almost every second half, even the games that they've lost, the Jaguars, I think, scored seven second half points, were constantly forced to punt and stuff like that. The Lions, they only scored 6 second half points. That touchdown after forcing 4 punts and a turnover to start the second half. The Bucs yesterday, they scored 6 points in the final 3 quarters after that one long pass to Mike Evans. It seems like not only do they have the talent, but they have the right coach in place that's pulling all the right strings. And by the time the second half rolls around, what they shut out like probably half the teams they played in the fourth quarter. It seems like once they figure out what you're trying to do, good luck.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the Falcons defense because I didn't necessarily think that I just thought it would take a little bit of time they have as many as 9 new starters on the field, given the personnel packages. 9 new starters, a new coordinator with a new system. That's not supposed to gel this quickly. It has been immediate. It's clear that's the strength of this team. I wouldn't go as far as calling up. It depends what your definition of elite is, but this is a top 10 unit. The only thing that they could do better is the turnovers, forcing turnovers and converting their pressures into sacks. But generally speaking, the method is working. It doesn't really matter about the sacks except for guys like us where we're thinking, oh, well, look at the sack totals. It doesn't really matter when in the grand scheme of things. It comes down to points per game and what you mentioned, the important facets of the game, pressures. They're pressuring opposing quarterbacks. Third down, they're I think top 5 now in third down conversion rate. Red zone, they're forcing teams to kick more field goals than touchdowns in the red zone. That is the bend, don't break style of defense that we've heard a lot about. We've heard about it with Dean Pease. Even before that, Dean Pease, we were the bend and then still just break. This is much different. This defense bends and it doesn't break. That's very important in today's NFL because this is such a pass-happy league that generally speaking, all you can hope to do when you face certain offenses is to slow them down and take 3 points instead of 6 and a touchdown. I can't speak enough how highly, and you said it in the prior segment. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Sports Talk ATL on the YouTube. You mentioned it. I can't give enough credit to Ryan Nielsen. He's pushing every button. He's pulling all the right levers. This guy's going to be a head coach sooner or later, and it sucks because the Falcons finally figured out like they got something going on that side of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if he garners head coaching opportunities this offseason. Hopefully, we get him for another year. But shout out Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith for pulling this guy out of New Orleans, mind you, a division rival, and he is absolutely thriving in Atlanta. I want to talk about a few individuals on that side of the ball, particularly the gym free agent of this offseason, Jesse Bates. He didn't have that wow interception play this past week, but he is constantly in the right place, constantly around the ball, constantly doing the right thing, covering up other deficiencies. He's playing next to a young Richie Grant who is making mistakes constantly. He is coming off his best performance of the season, as you pointed out, but Jesse Bates just makes everything look better underneath him. He is incredibly versatile. He's reliable in coverage. He's reliable against the run. He who can blitz him. He's great attacking the quarterback. There is nothing a part of his game that isn't at the very worst average, and he's elite in a lot of other areas. He is by far the best free agent signing in recent memory in terms of the Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith era, and I don't even think it's particularly close.
I want to mention a player, and I agree on everything about Jesse Bates. He's been unbelievable. He's been worth every penny, and there's no doubt about that. He's been the best safety in football, in my opinion. But I want to mention someone, and I'm sure you were probably going to mention him, And this might be, in terms of value, the best value that the Falcons got this whole entire offseason when talking about the defense, and it's Jeff Okudah. Ever since he's come out, I mean, he looks like a legitimate starting cornerback. And I know I think even last week we're talking about, I wouldn't mind going ahead and tucking this thing to bed and getting him signed to a multi-year deal, because him and AJ Terrell, I know AJ Terrell had a little bit of struggles there in the first quarter against Mike Evans, but listen, that guy's Mike Evans. When you're shadowing a guy like Mike Evans,
future Hall of Famer,
occasionally you're going to get beat. He's probably the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL that nobody talks about. But then when you play him, you're like, oh, dang, this guy's still really, really good. I mean, he's just been doing it, putting out 1,000-yard seasons, every year since he's been in the league. The guy's a superstar. Occasionally that's going to happen. You're going to get beat. Hopefully, Terrell, he's had some moments where he's gotten beat, but he's still one of the best corners in the league. But having a guy like Jeff Okudah on the other side has been, this is a good Bucs receiving core that they were up against. And there were a couple ticky-tack holding calls on Okudah that one didn't get called and then one did get called. I didn't think he committed holding on either of those plays. They were calling those all game, and that's just sometimes the game's called tighter than others. Most of the time, those don't get called. He was outstanding yesterday. Ever since he's been penciled in as a starter, since after that Lions game, he's looked like a guy that should have been the number 3 overall pick. This is the best he's probably looked his entire career. He looks healthy. He looks confident. He's physical. He's physical in the run game. There's just a lot to like. And then we can go to David Onyemata. That guy's just been, he was another free agent signing. He was a stud the other day. And yeah, the sack totals aren't there, but it's not always about sacks, man. He is pushing the pocket. He is making guys uncomfortable. Baker Mayfield, I believe this is true. I think they said it on the broadcast. I think he was the least sacked quarterback in the NFL coming into that game. The Falcons come up with 3 sacks. They could have had 4 or 5 more, because there were several times where they called the right blitz and the guy just ran past Mayfield. And you got to give Mayfield a little credit for that. He's an elusive little guy in the pocket. Even though he's not the most athletic guy, he knows how to get out of jams when he's there. But there were so many times where the Falcons could have they could have 6 or 7 sacks in this game. And credit to Nielsen, credit to Onyemata. Calais Campbell was great in this game again. Credit to the coverage, because there was a couple coverage sacks in there. It's just it gets me going, man. We haven't had a defense like this in Atlanta since I can remember. Maybe there was in the early 2000s when I was 6, 7 years old, back when Vic was there. I know we led the league in sacks, I think, in 2004, but it's impressive, man. And the funny thing is, you talked about the gelling thing. It's not crazy to think they're going to get even better as they keep playing with each other.
Well, you still have to think about the young guys who are still developing. All we're talking about is the established players. Maybe Richie Grant takes another step. Talking about Arnold Ebiketie, he just had, in terms of snaps, the best game of his career. He had the most snaps he's ever had as a Falcon. And there's another guy, you talk about value. Jeff Okudah absolutely gave up a measly day 3 draft pick for the former number 3 overall pick, who is looking like the number 3 overall pick again. What about an undrafted free agent named Nate Landman?
Yeah.
Now,
this
guy has stepped in for Troy Anderson, and there has been little to no drop off. And I could argue he's been better in some facets of the game. Now, people are going to say Nate Landman is terrible in coverage, and they're probably telling you the truth. The fact of the matter is Troy Anderson isn't Levante David in coverage. It's not like Troy Anderson is a world beater in coverage. In fact, Troy Anderson looked pretty bad in coverage himself. The fact of the matter is this undrafted free agent is proving to be a capable starter next to Caden Ellis. The guy has no regard for his body. He is willing to stick his nose into any pile. He's fearless when he's defending the run. Obviously, there's, stuff that he can work on in pass coverage. But again, for an undrafted free agent who's thrust into a starting role, I couldn't be more happy for Nate Landman. Jake, who has been on the Nate Landman train since we signed him 2 years ago as an undrafted free agent. The guy's a freak. He's a stud. So, yes, it's not to say that this defense can't get better. The guys who we expected to play well are playing well. The kids who are still developing are still developing. If they figure it out, this defense can be elite. I wouldn't go as far to say it is elite as a top 5 unit, but it is absolutely a top 10 unit. They start forcing more turnovers and bringing quarterbacks down, converting those pressures to sacks, and we're talking about one of the best units in the league.
And one guy I wanted to touch on, one more guy, D. Alford. We kind of touched on him several times throughout the season. He's become an absolute beast in that nickel corner spot. He has been a stud. He made a couple of big plays. I think he had one play there on one of the final drives. I think it was the one that ended in the Richie Grant pick. So it didn't, where Chris Godwin catches the ball and they were like, beautiful ball. But I think if D. Alford slips on that play, I think he could have had a pick there. He definitely would have gotten a handoff off of it. But if you go back and watch that play, he slips as Godwin's getting out of the route and he's trying to jump the route. He might have been able to pick that ball. But regardless, he's been unbelievable. And that's another guy that was came out of the CFL, undrafted free agent. You can say what you want about Terry Fontenot and his drafting, which hasn't been great. There's no doubt about it. We can acknowledge that. And maybe that changes as some of these guys get older. But so far, it's been pretty piss poor. His free agent signings in all facets, from undrafted free agents, from the big guys to Jesse Bates and David Onyemata and Calais Campbell, have been home runs. I mean, and that's kind of what he was known for in New Orleans. He wasn't known for like the picking the guys, oh, we got Cam Jordan because of me. No, it was, I know how to get value in free agency. And he's shown you that early on in his tenure as the Falcons general manager.
Yeah, the pro personnel scouting has been absolutely elite. I mean, absolutely elite. There's been far more, hits than misses. And it's not just free agency. It's the Jeff Okudah trade. It's the Bud Dupree 1 year deal. Jonnu Smith trade. It's everything. We can think back to Cordero Patterson. That was at that point was one of the best free agent signings of the league. There's just so much to like about Terry Fontenot in the pro personnel facet of his job. He's done an excellent job. Now, that to say that that's not the case for the drafting, that's still, a positive. And how much Arthur Smith has to do with the guys who are drafted, we don't know. So how much can we attribute to Terry Fontenot? I don't know. But this defense has been absolutely unbelievable. And a lot of it has to do with Terry Fontenot's work scouting the pro personnel facet of the NFL.
Yeah, hopefully the drafting gets better. Maybe we need new guys in the building, but the free agency has been great. I want to talk about one last thing after the break. Bijan Robinson, he only gets one touch in this game. We'll touch on it after the break.